Welcome back. We're now just 1 week away from the September 30th government shutdown deadline, but House and Senate leaders reached a bipartisan agreement this weekend to fund the government through December 20th. This continuing resolution includes $231 million for the U.S. Secret Service, with conditions that the agency cooperate with congressional investigations after 2 failed assassination attempts against former President Trump. It does not include the SAVE Act, of course, which Trump has supported. This is a measure that would help secure upcoming elections by ensuring that non-citizens are voting. The House is expected to vote on this bill as early as Wednesday. Joining me now is New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, a member of the House Ways and Means and Science, Space and Technology Committees. Congresswoman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Maria. Always great to be on. Great show.
I want to get your take on this continuing resolution, obviously, but I have a major problem with these conditions that are being put in here. Okay, so in other words, you have to beg for conditions for the Secret Service to answer to a committee that's supposed to oversee them? I mean, really?
Yeah, look, we're in a terrible spot right now, Maria. The Senate has not passed any of the appropriations bills. We've passed 5, which was a very arduous process through our divided party. We were able to get 5 through our appropriations committee. The Senate has taken up none. And as long as Chuck Schumer knows that we have a divided House Republican conference, he knows he doesn't have to do anything. And we've got this. We voted on the SAVE Act last week. We had, I think, 14 Republicans, maybe 15, who voted against the Speaker's play to put on the SAVE Act on that. This is near and dear to my heart, Maria, because I am the co-founder and the chair of the Election Integrity Caucus. This is our election's going to come down to this. The American people, everybody says this to me, the Speaker's correct. He's traveled all across the country, as I have after my crazy race of 2020, the last presidential race during the pandemic, about our security of our elections, free and fair elections, making voting great again, making sure that our voters are getting out to vote, that they're not being undermined by non-citizen voting. It was a great bill. It was co-sponsored by Chip Roy. We added that to force the Senate to vote for it. And of course, we got it stuck to us by our own side. I don't like continuing resolutions. This continuing resolution doesn't have the things that are really important to me. I understand the jam the Speaker's in. If we could stick together, we could get some of our priorities. We could make sure that we can increase our majority so that we can get some of these appropriations done and get more votes so that we can move the needle. But right now, the Speaker is trying to literally steer the Titanic away from the iceberg. And Chuck Schumer is at the helm, moving us into the iceberg to cause a government shutdown while the Republicans have no leverage because we are not sticking together. Here's the other problem. Joe Biden controls everything in the federal government. Our bloated federal bureaucracy is controlled. And you know what's happened when Barack Obama controlled, when he was the president, they inflicted harm on the American people. When I was in office and President Trump was actually the president and we had the Schumer shutdown, President Trump protected the American people, including our Homeland Security, all those discretionary funds that go to our defense and our military. We aren't going to have that under a Biden shutdown. And so to force us into a shutdown right now gives the Democrats the leverage. The Speaker did a letter showing the polling. I don't really care about the polling, but the polling shows that the American people don't want a shutdown. So what do we have? If we stuck together, if all Republicans, or at least enough of our very, very slim majority stuck together, we could get some of our priorities. We're not going to get them all until we grow our majority and we win the Senate. But if we throw it all away now in a government shutdown, we will lose the House, we will lose the presidency, and we will stay in the minority in the Senate.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though. The Democrats know how you feel about that. You're afraid of a government shutdown right before an election because you're going to get blamed. Do you think they don't know that that's what you're feeling and all you and your colleagues are feeling? So
but Maria, let me just say, no one's afraid. Look, if President Trump or the president, or we had a Republican president, we shut the government down in my first term. We shut it down. And guess what we got? We got money. We got stuff out of Schumer because we were in the majority. When and if, by the way, if we had the presidency and we didn't have the majority in the 2 houses, we can actually shut the government down. It's not a risk to the American people. And it's not so much a risk to say not getting elected. I said I don't care about the polls. The problem is they will inflict pain. They already have. Look what they've done to this country with executive orders. And so it's not a matter of being afraid to shut it down. It's a stupid move to shut it down when Joe Biden and whoever the shadow government behind him is actually running the White House. Who is running the White House? That's the most important question. It's not Joe Biden. It's not Kamala Harris, God forbid. It's the people in the background. So I'm not afraid of a shutdown. I'm just worried about the pain that's going to be inflicted on the American people by the Democrats running the House or running the federal government right now.
By the way, Dr. Jill Biden, the First Lady, ran that cabinet meeting last week. Maybe she's running the country, but you're right. I mean, this is like a very perilous couple of months until, you know, we know that there's a new person at the wheel. But I'm really stuck on the idea that your colleagues on the left refuse to just live by the letter of the law. You know, non-citizens are not supposed to vote in national federal elections, okay? And yet they refuse to agree to the SAVE Act. They refuse to, I mean, look at what's going on in California right now, that they're trying to come up with a law that bans cities from accepting ID to vote. What? Really? Is this what you're spending your time on?
Maria, they are so lawless. Look at New York State Constitution actually requires citizenship for voting, but New York City goes ahead and passes a law that says non-citizens can vote, which we are litigating in the courts. Everything we have to do is litigating in the courts, and it's so frustrating that they control the Department of Justice. The only way we can win anything is by suing.
Let me get to some other issues, because President Trump announced a new border policy plan during a rally in Wilmington, North Carolina Saturday. Watch this.
I'm announcing a new plan to end all sanctuary cities in North Carolina and all across our country. No more sanctuary cities.
So, Congresswoman, while he was in New York last week, President Trump said that he does believe that Deep Blue New York could be in play in November because of the increasing concerns by residents over the illegal migrant crisis. I mean, people are getting mugged, attacked. Insiders on both sides of the aisle are also telling Fox News Digital that there's a shift of Long Island's Nassau and Suffolk counties as well. There's a shift to the right, and that could be promising for Trump on Election Day. Both went solidly red back in 2022 for the midterms, even though state voter rolls show Democrats outnumber Republicans in both counties. So I ask you, Congresswoman, do you think Trump has a chance of winning New York?
Well, look, there's 5 weeks or so left. I think if Trump continues to stay on message and talk about what's actually going on with the border, and especially the northern border, which I've been sounding the alarm on for almost 2 years now, which is most of my district, the northern border of New York, and the dangerous laws that are passed in New York City and New York State. It's not just New York City, it's all of New York. We are seeing, all kinds of violence against citizens. We're seeing $5 billion being spent on illegal immigrants, and we're seeing crime flooding into our communities, crime against women. We're seeing the cartels are taking over, and it's partly because of the sanctuary city policy, but it's also because of the 2019 green light law that was passed under Governor Cuomo that gives special protection and status to illegal immigrants, including valid driver's licenses, and prohibits law enforcement from working together. The very thing that the 9/11 Commission said was a priority. Law enforcement needs to work together to keep our communities safe. This law prohibited it. I have actually a bill that would require law enforcement to work together again in order to keep us safe. Maria, I have people sending me video cam. I just got another one last night from the northern border where they're showing illegal immigrants flooding across the border. In this particular video, it shows illegal immigrants stopping a school bus full of children.
Oh my God.
Who are these people that are able to come in and stop a school bus full of children? And This is dangerous. This is going to happen. When people start to wake up and realize the choice is not Kamala Harris. The choice is not the Democrats who have a veto-proof majority against Governor Hochul in the state of New York, which is why we're having this far-left policies that are coming from New York City happening in New York.
Yeah.
They've got to wake up. We have an opportunity. We have some good candidates. We have an opportunity to switch over that veto-proof majority in the state, but we have got to win back the House, and we have to win the presidency. This country will be irreversibly destroyed if we have 4 years of Harris-Walz. It is, I mean, just watching them on the campaign trail is dangerous enough.
Oh, my God. We just had a whole discussion about her gun ownership. I mean, she was so adamant that she owns a gun. She says, you're going to get shot if you go on my property. And Liz just told us that her campaign says, no, she doesn't have a gun. What? Look, You said
she is
that
a
if
total
the Democrats...
fraud. People know that. But Trump needs to expose that, and we need to do that on the ground. People need to see it. And honestly, I don't see as many Harris Wall signs as I campaign all throughout my district right now, as I did actually Biden signs. So I know that, there were very few Hillarys. So I'm thinking that we do have a shot. I don't know if Trump can win New York, but he certainly can help us win some of these swing districts. And I'm hoping that's what's going to happen. But Pennsylvania is what we're focusing on, too.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is real important. I know that. But, that's why Trump started talking about the SALT deduction. You say if Democrats let Trump's tax cuts expire, the average taxpayer in your district would see a 25% tax increase, right? I mean, just by letting the tax cuts expire, that never comes up when she's talking about, all of these efforts that she claims she has to only tax the rich.
Right. And Trump needs to talk about that. That's an average. That's a mean. Many more people will actually have a tax increase. It's trillions of dollars nationwide. But the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in my district, over 90% of the people in my new district, actually, my old district was 95, in my new district got a tax cut, and a significant tax cut, not to mention all of those provisions on the so-called corporate tax, which really helps small businesses. And that's what drives our economy in upstate New York. Most of the businesses are small businesses. Many are pass-throughs. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act cannot expire, or you will see a real devastation to the New York economy. Well,
we'll take a look at that as well. And by the way, there's a reason that Governor Greg Abbott designated Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist group. He did so yesterday. We're going to talk about that coming up. He joined me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures. And, you talk about this massive crime wave that we're seeing across big cities. This Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gang has been behind a lot of this issue. So we'll talk about that. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thank you, Claudia Tenney.
Thank you so much, Maria.
We'll catch up soon.